Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm T with Three Sage Creates and I'm ready to start my next video. So in a haul, I don't know, probably a few months ago in a big haul that I did, I got a lot of these very large file folders. They actually aren't even manila. They feel like maybe recycled cardboard type file folders, so they're a little bit flimsy, so not too sturdy, but I have a ton of them. And so I've been wondering, what do I do? What do I do? So I started a project, or I started working on some stuff that I've been wanting to do for the longest time. It's nothing new, but I want to share what I've got going on here. So I'm working on these tall and narrow, tall and skinny, document sized journals. I don't know. There's so many names for them, but these very long or tall, narrow, skinny junk journals. And so that's what I have kind of been playing around with. The bases of these are made with these file folders here, and I was playing around with some different styles. So basically, if you're new to the world of journal making, junk journaling, this size it can be any size that you want, to be perfectly honest with you. There are no rules, but if you want to talk about traditionally speaking, what size is this? And it's typically going to be the size of your regular like letter size paper. So an 8.5 by 11 folded in half. So then the traditional size for these is going to be is going to be 11 by 4.25. So traditionally, when you see these, they're typically anywhere from 9 to 11 inches in height, and then they vary from 3, I believe, to I've seen them up to 4.5, maybe 5 inches in width, but you really want to keep them kind of narrow. I think I did one at 4, and I think I did one at 4.25. I could be wrong. This was my 4.25, and then this one was my 4. So, and I played around with them. I tried to have a little bit of fun. Let me go ahead and show you what I've got here. So I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this ribbon. I'm not loving it. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Okay, but this is what I've got so far. They're not decorated or anything. I've just kind of got the bases down. But I've got this little guy here. I stitched that on so that it would hold this in place, right? And then I ended up doing 4 inches on this, but I loved this color of this paper so much. And I thought that it just really went with the overall theme of this. So I wanted it visible. So it's poking out there just a little bit so that when it's all closed, it looks like this. So that nice tealy, turquoisey color is really coming through on this. But anyway, and so there's this guy and then this little bit of vellum here on both sides. So a little bit of vellum. And then here is my cover. It's the inside. And then the actual signature. 1, 2. I guess this is probably just 3, even though this is 2 separate sheets. 3, 4. Here's an bag. So wait. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, I've got 11. I hate doing odd numbers. I obviously wasn't counting when I did this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We're going to count these as 2. 12. All right. So that's basically what it looks like. I've been leaving these long lately because before I want to wait until after I have finished the whole thing to decide whether or not I'm just going to tie these off and cut them short, or if I'm going to leave them long and attach something. So lately I've been leaving them long. Like I said, I haven't decorated the inside of this yet. I will at some point. But I was more or less just kind of playing around with, how I was going to construct this. And this is a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. So instead of the traditional 3-hole, just because it's such a tall journal. And so then the next one I've got going on here is this guy. And this one, I did 2 signatures, and then you can see this one is a little bit rounded. The spine on this is rounded. And I think that the journal that I'm going to do with you guys on camera that I'm going to show you, I think I'm going to do this rounded style like this. But anyhow, I've got some ribbon here. This guy opens up. Isn't that cute? That's so cute. Okay, anyway, I put an eyelet here and then attach the ribbon. And then I've got 2 signatures. This one was kind of the paper on it said grow, and it had kind of like some little children's themes going on. So I ended up pulling more of a old-fashioned children's vibe into this one. So I took some of my large pages from some large storybooks that I had, and then kind of put this one together. That is the first signature, and then the second one. And again, I haven't decorated this either. I've just been kind of playing around with the whole idea of how this is going to look when I put it together. It's the Five Little Peppers. If any of you are familiar with that old book or that story. So yeah, just some pages, and then that's what that looks like, and then the flap in the back opens there as well. So let me just tie this off. So I'm thinking that with it being July, that I am going to work on something that maybe is a little bit patriotic, but kind of old-fashioned, a little bit nostalgic patriotic, I think. So I do have a collection of Ginny Bolin stuff that I picked up at a D-stash a few months ago, and I was thinking that that collection might lend well to kind of something that's a little nostalgic. I'm hoping that I can make it semi-patriotic, so we'll see how that goes. Let me set these aside. Let me pull out that collection and show you what I've got. So it's a lot of stuff, actually. There's a lot of stuff in this collection. Let me see. And it does just kind of have this nostalgia kind of a feel to it. Lots of little chipboard buttons. It's a lot of red and black, but I really think that there's a lot of these blue elements, and that there's enough of them that I can pull in some of the blue and have it look, you know, a little bit more patriotic. Little journal cards, all these little odds and ends and bits. I'm going to try to get down to the paper, but also let you kind of get an idea of what I'm working with here. See, I think we can make this work. I think it'll actually look, pretty good. All of this ephemera bits. This is a really nice collection. Like I said, I bought it at a D-stash, and someone had it all together in one kit, so that was nice. So that's more ephemera, more ephemera. Okay, now let's get down to the paper bits. Some of these guys with their little shapes. It's a brown, there's some reds, black, and then a family tree paper pad. So I'm kind of trying to think of things that, you know, we can make patriotic. So our little bits of, but also nostalgic. So a little bit of red, white, and blue kind of stuff. So some of this might work, some of it might not. But let's look at what we've got here. Get first impressions. So I'm hoping that this will work. I guess I should have gone through it beforehand, but I didn't, because that's the way I do things. I kind of like to just fly by the seat of my pants, good, bad, or otherwise. I'm telling you, some things are really planned out, and then other things it's not so much. I didn't even, yeah, that's just the way it goes. Look at this. This is some great stuff. Okay, even the black will work. This is perfect. This would be great. So I'm seeing that we've probably got enough in here to make a couple of signatures at least. So I think that that'll work to do the two signature bit. And this is really thin paper. So I'm trying to decide, I may have to take this out and tea dye some of this paper to get it to work. Because, you know, that white side, I don't care for the white side. It makes me antsy. I got to cover it. I got to fill it in. I got to do something. All that white space just, yeah, we got to do something about it. Okay, and then this is colored cardstock. I don't know. Maybe this might be useful in some ephemera, but I don't know that that's going to be really all that useful in the actual book. Look at that. That'll look great. Okay, and now we've got some double-sided. Some ephemera. Nice, nice. Look at this. Kind of liking this. Be Our Guest. All right, and it looks like we're nearing the end. Some of these big bright blue pages would have been fantastic, but I've just got some smaller bits of this. All right, so let's see. I think that we've got enough that we can make 2 signatures. So I traditionally, my signatures are anywhere from 8 to 12. I do like to keep it in even numbers. That is going to be too small to do anything with. Right now I've got to think in terms of my cover. So I'm going to need a couple, I'm going to need at least, I'm going to need 2 12 by 12 pages, honestly, to do the cover. I prefer, okay, I prefer something blue, so that is fantastic. Let's set that aside. That's a nice bright blue. And then I kind of wanted something that I could layer it up with. So something that's kind of similar to either this in a shape, or even to create our own kind of something that'll overlap. So that's what I'm looking for next. Look at that. I wish that was a little wider, because I would totally use that. That would be perfect if it was just a little bit wider. But I'm also looking at this, and I'm kind of liking the cherry pattern on this. I don't know. The blues are a little bit different, but are they far enough away from each other? So if we had this, you know, wrapped around, and then we had this coming, you know, right across the midsection of this. I don't know. I don't know. It's what I'm looking at right now, but we'll keep going. We'll see. I'm also kind of liking this. This is cool, but it looks a little bit too pink. If it had a little bit of a darker color, I think that would be perfect. There was another, here we go. This one might work. Maybe a little bit better. What if we wrapped it in this? So this is our cover, and then this is the little bit that we wrap around, and then this is a nice bright inside interior. I don't know. Do we want high contrast or something that's a little bit lower contrast? We got to figure it out. Okay, I also like this a lot. That's not really patriotic, but it looks like a lot of fun. Okay, these are all sticker sheets, so I can put those back in there. This is fantastic. Red Star candy drops, 5 cents. I mean, I like that. Okay, so what if I did this on the cover? Yes. And did this kind of in the midsection to overlap. What do we think? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to set this aside too. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Designing these is kind of the most, it's a lot of fun. You know, you can really divide this up into a lot of different projects when you're working on. Okay, here's a second sheet of this. So I'm going to set that aside just in case we end up needing it, because I don't always cut right the first time and I sometimes need another one. Okay, these are great, but I think these are all good for like interior. Yeah, for signatures. Okay. You know, so you've got your whole curating part, the part where you're gathering everything together as far as the junk journal goes and all the different stages in it. And then you move on to, I don't know, what's next, your cover. Maybe you do your cover next, you know. And then, okay. You know, and then you figure out your signatures and your, you know, how you're going to bind it. And so to me, those are all just different, they're separate projects within the overall project. So sub projects, you know, that you get to work on. And I love all of them individually with the exception of closures. I struggle with closures so much, and to me, it's a pain. I'm just not that creative. I'm not that inventive. So it's just a bit of a pain for me. So with the exception of closures, everything else is, you know, fantastic. Okay. So there's that. Do we know? Okay, I don't think that the rest of this is going to work. So let's just put it up, because this is all going to be signature pages and ephemera bits for decorating. So that's fine. I will clear this out of the way and we'll take a look at what we have selected and see what we're going to do with this cover. Okay, so here's what I'm going to need. I'm going to need something for the cover. I'm going to need something for the insides, and I'm going to need something for the spine. And then if I want to do a decorative piece like this, I'll need something for that as well. So we're looking at 2 12 by 12 sheets, possibly a third one. So I did a Mod Podge of tissue paper on this to make this spine, because I wanted it to be a lot more flexible and not as stiff, you know, as the cardstock would be. So this is thin enough though that I could use this because it's super thin paper, and I think that it would work just fine, you know, for a spine. So now I've got all these gorgeous pages, and now I just need to figure out which direction I am going to go. This is a heavier cardstock. I really want something that's going to pop and say red, white, and blue. I like this. I like this a lot. And I think that this may end up being my cover. I think that this is going to be my cover. It's going to make a thin cover, but we'll deal with that. I think that I want to make this blue my spine. Interior. Yes. And then think that I am going to use this and this somehow on the cover. I'm not sure how yet. But I think I might use it on the cover. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I'm so indecisive. All right, we've got a minute of time. We've got a minute of time because we need to go ahead and prep this guy. So let's get to that. Let's get to our base, and I'm going to show you how I went about prepping that rounded spine. So we've got these scored lines here. So we've got the fold line, and then we've got these 3 score lines. Those are going to be the spine of our journal. So I want to go ahead and reinforce all of these folds. So and we're going to do this many times throughout this process because we want to keep this part flexible. So we're going to reinforce these many, many times. We're going to get the bone folder out in several parts of, in several steps of this process and really get these going. Okay, so this is my spine. So when we're measuring, we want to go ahead and fold it out so that it's straight and we've got the entire bit. So we're going to do this in, let's go ahead and do the 4 inches on this. No, let's go ahead and do 4 1/4. So we'll be traditional. So just like if we had a size of 11 by 8.5 sheet of paper. So we'll do a traditional 11 by 4 1/4. So we'll do 4 1/4. So I'm going to cut from here to here 4 1/4, and then here to here on this side 4 1/4. Okay, you don't want to fold this and have it flat. You don't want to do that because then when you bring it back out and this is your spine, then it's not going to be even. Let me go ahead and cut that in front of you so that you're aware of what I'm talking about. Let me pull my guillotine cutter out. My big machine. Okay. So, and these are huge. This is like 12 by 12. It's massive. So, I want to make sure that you can see this. So here's my score line. There's my score line. Those are the score lines on the outside, and then I have one in the center. I'm going to take this score line that's on the outside here. So we're working with this one on the far outside, and I'm going to go to 4 1/4 inches. Let's make sure that that is lined up. 4 1/4 and cut. And then I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to measure from this line to 4 1/4 and cut. I have a lot of these things, so that's good for me because if I mess up, then I've got plenty more. And then there we go. So if I fold it along this line, it works. Which is another way you could probably cut it. You can cut it if you fold it down the very center line and cut it, then you'll also have a perfect measurement. Okay, so we're going to cut this down to 11. It is not 11 right now. So there we go. And I think that I decided I wanted to use the polka dots on this. So let's go ahead and cut this down. I am going to need probably, to cover this, I'm only going to need about 2.5 inches just for overlap's sake. Let's just give us a little bit more to work with. I'm going to keep it at 12. So it's 2.5 by 12. All right. So this is super, super thin. And so I worry that I'm going to stress out my spine. So of course I'm going to reinforce it. So I'm going to pull out the tape, and I'm not going to worry about, I'm going to go ahead and do it all the way across. I'm not going to worry about trimming this down to size, because I really want to just reinforce this really well. So I'm not going to be that particular and try to cut it widthwise to fit the spine, because the spine is going to be kind of rounded. So I want all of it to have just, you know, a little bit of protection. If you do not have this particular bookbinding tape, don't worry about it. You can use washi. I would just do several layers of washi depending on how thick your washi is, and you'll be fine. Be totally fine. So I did this with my other two books. My other one. I didn't do this with the second one. I did this with the one where I had the nice spine. Let me make some marks here so you can actually see where these lines are, because I know you can't see them from there. Okay. So with the one where I did 2 signatures and I have that rounded or curved spine, I did use this tape. With the other one, I did not, because I was covering the entire thing in cardstock, and it was heavy cardstock, so I didn't bother. I didn't feel like I was going to need to reinforce that. All right, let me flip this over and trim. You want to get your scraper or your bone folder out, and you want to go ahead and make sure that it is burnished down really well, right? Make sure you've got it burnished. Okay, now that this tape's on, it's a lot stiffer than it was. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to fold it again and score, just to make sure that we're keeping those nice score lines reinforced, so that it knows that it's supposed to be bending and curving. So we're, like I said, we're going to do this several times throughout the project, just so that we can keep these score lines or these fold lines nice and pliable. There we go. All right, so now we can see them on the inside, we can see them on the outside. Okay, now let's go ahead and apply this guy. So let's see, I am going to tape my double-sided tape. I'm going to run it down the center and then down this center. I'm going to avoid my score lines. Let's go down this side and this side. Okay. All right. And again, I'm going to burnish these down. If you don't have a scraper tool, you can use, if you've got an old credit card, you can use that. You can also use your bone folder if you've got a bone folder. And everyone should have a bone folder. Absolutely love my bone folder. Love, love, love my bone folder. I think it's one of the first tools that I ever purchased when I started card making. And it has been with me since, so it's been with me for a little over 20 years. Have I told you the weird story about my bone folder? So when I first started recording, at some point I lost the bone folder. I couldn't find it, and I only have one. It's the only one that I have. It's the only one that I use. Absolutely love it. But then I misplaced it, and I could not find my bone folder anywhere. And I thought, as soon as I buy a new one, it will turn up. And so I waited. And then finally, so I'm using my art glitter glue and this tape, double-sided tape. I'm going to go ahead and put it down. I'm going to try to center it as much as possible. And we do want it to overlap pretty evenly on each end. So I was like, as soon as I, buy something, it'll turn up. But I waited too long, and I just really needed another bone folder. So I went to Michael's and I bought a cheapy bone folder. Okay, so this is the cheapy bone folder. So you can tell the difference between cheapy bone folder and my bone folder. And then mine has, see how long it's been used, and it's got a little chip at the end of it. I'm aware of that. Anyway, it feels great. It's already been worn down, good use of my hands. So I bought this guy. I don't love it, but I thought eventually I'll splurge and I'll get another one. And then this turns up. And I'm like, oh, all right. I have no idea where this came from. I have no idea where it's been. I didn't purchase it in any haul videos. It hasn't, I've never seen this bone folder before, but I was like, you know what? Bone folder, bonus. And so I thought, this is mine because it feels about the same, right? But I'm like, I always thought mine was a little bit more rounded. Then my daughter comes in and says, look at what I found in my room. I have no idea where this came from. But look, very similar. So now I do have at least a decent backup bone folder. I still don't know where that one came from, though. Never in my life have I seen that bone folder. Okay, anyway, sorry. I digress. Bone folder story. All right, so now that we've got this paper on here, again, we're going to reinforce the score lines. We want to get every part of this spine comfortable with being folded so that we get that nice rounded spine. It takes a little bit of working. It does. It's not that difficult really because it does naturally want to do it, want to fold in those spots. It would be a lot harder though if we put everything in place and then went back and tried to fold it and reinforce those. It would be a lot stiffer and a lot harder. So just do it along the way. Every time you add something to this spine, I would say go ahead and reinforce, right? Right. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and miter where this outside is. That's that outside score line there. And then I'm going to do it again on this outside. I'm going to leave the center one as is. Let me flip it over so you can see. And maybe if I drew the lines out so you can see those fold lines, maybe that'll be helpful there. So we're going to just kind of miter those. And we do this so that when we fold it over, right, we've got nice coverage, okay? But as it bends, it's not going to cause issues with folding up the paper onto itself, right? And causing the little wrinkles there. All right. So now that we've got that done, let's go ahead and put a little glue down. Get these folded over. Might end up having to use Fabri-Tac on this just because this guy has some texture. I'm not too worried about it because we're going to put another piece over it, so it'll be fine. So I cut this down to 2.5, so it's the same width, but I cut it down to just shy of 11. So it's like 12 and 7/8. I'm sorry, it's 10 and 7/8, so that it goes all the way up to the top and covers, but it's not going to overlap. So let me go ahead and ink up this edge so that you're not seeing that white core when you look down on it. I'm going to ink this edge. The rest of it's going to be covered, so I'm not worried about the other edges. All right, on this one, I'm going to go ahead and put my tape down. Are any of you guys working on 4th of July projects? Do any of you do it? Because I don't see, you know, I mean, other than yard art and decorating, I don't really see people sending like 4th of July cards or, you know, things like that. I know I've made them in the past, but is it something, you know, you really do? That's why I was kind of thinking this isn't necessarily meant to be 4th of July as much as it's meant to just be kind of, you know, more patriotic. And then with this, you know, Jenny Bolin collection in particular, I thought, okay, that's got a little bit of nostalgia to it, you know. So why not? Why not? Okay, let me burnish this down. Peel this tape off. When I was making these tall and narrow, tall and skinny, whatever you want to call them, journals, when I was just kind of playing around with it, having some fun. Like I said, that's the first time I've made them that large. I did do a book over Christmas, I used some ephemera book covers to make them, but I think I cut them down to like 8, so they weren't quite that big. So this is the first time I've made the really big ones, and I've always loved the look of them and thought that I wanted to do that. And so when I hauled those file folders, I was like, yes, that is perfect. I know what I'm using those for. So that has been fun, and I get to do this. Finally get to try it out, and I've been having so much fun with it. All right, trying to just line it up. Okay, get it burnished down. And then guess what we're going to do? Yep, we're going to fold it again. Make sure it's got those nice folds in it. All right. Let's fold it in half. You see how I started to bend it, and it's already like, see, I know where I'm supposed to fold. Let's make sure we're good. We're good on the inside. Yep. Nice. Okay, one more. Do not skip this step if you're doing this, because if you wait until the end to do this, it's not going to, it might be a little bit frustrating, and you may not end up, you know, making it as pliable as you had wanted. So now that I've done that, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to allow it some drying time here. What I want to make sure is, so this actual part of the book here is 4 1/4 by 11. So from here to here. So I want to cut down enough space so that it kind of meets up here. It abuts this part right here, but that it's also going to allow me to fold over. So I'm going to cut, instead of 4 1/4, I'm going to cut 5 by 12. So I'm going to leave it at 12 in height, and I'm going to cut it to 5 inches. I'm going to do 2. We're going to put it on, and then we'll fold it over on the inside. So you want to make sure you've got plenty of room for folding and everything. So let me show you how we'll do one of these, and then I'll do the other side off camera, because you don't need to be around to see all of that. I'm going to go ahead and ink up my edges. I'm using Tim Holtz Distress Ink and Walnut Stain, because it's just what I have out here. And I find that if you pick one of the Distress Stain colors and you stick with that one Distress Ink color, and you distress everything in that single color. It really ties all of it together. Go ahead and do the second one while I've got it out here. So typically I would do this with Mod Podge and tape combo. I don't know if I'm going to do that because this paper is super, super thin. So I may just do a tape and this guy. I don't know. And you're right. Normally we would need to use a wider tape, preferably, because then you'll get more coverage. I ran out of my wider tape, so I'm waiting on more tape to be delivered. So I'm stuck with this. I don't know, what is this, like a 1/4 inch here? It's not, oh, it's challenging to say the least. So we're going to put this down in intervals here. I'm having to use a lot more just because it's so thin. I'm out of a lot of stuff, guys. So you'll notice that I'm working on just this cardboard background because this is my my pad that has the nice it's the We Are Memory. We Are now. I think it was We Are Memory Keepers though in the past. Anyway, the paper pad that I use for my background, I ripped the last sheet off of it the other day, and I was like, oh, I guess that's the end of that. It kind of took me by surprise. I was not expecting that. And so then I was like, okay. So I went to Amazon and I went to order, but then they were like, it was going to be like 2 weeks to get it in. And I'm like, okay, well, there you go. So I'm waiting on that to arrive. And in the meantime, I'm going to stick with using the cardboard backing to that, because we use everything around here. We use all of it. All right, let's burnish that down. And I think that I'm going to speed this part up where I'm actually attaching it. I'm going to use my art glitter glue and attach this on here. And then I'll come back and we'll do the actual folding up of the paper so you can see what that looks like. All right, saw me fiddling with all that. So I wanted it to be as close to the actual fold line as possible, but not like on it. So that's why I was kind of fiddling with that, because I was making sure that I wasn't too close. And then I've got all of this to get rid of. It's like having silly string on my desk. I really hope my tape comes in soon. All right, so now that we've got some overlapping, we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to miter its corners. Get a nice little angle on there. And then one more down here. There we go. And just going to get these edges. A lot of this will be covered, but just in case. Just in case. Okay. If you have, I've got a really thin sheet of paper. This might be a little bit more difficult if you have heavier cardstock, but you kind of want to go in there, and the bone folder is good for that. You kind of want to go in and just kind of start working this paper or cardstock over your base. And this is a little bit more difficult because this is so thin. That file folder that I'm working with is so thin. If you were using regular file folders like the manila ones, that probably is a little sturdier than what I'm working with here. Like I said, this feels more like recycled paper file folders. But it's what I've got and we're going to use it. So I'm trying to make sure I'm not bending up the actual file folder. This paper is so thin too. So that makes it a little bit easier. When I was working with the thicker cardstock on the other one, I was having to be really careful because I was bending up the edges. Okay, so we are going to do the same thing here. We are going to tape it up and glue it down. So I'm going to start with my ends first. This isn't any different than you would do with any other chipboard album, right? It's the same process if you were using chipboard. Have you guys been daring enough to try one of these large junk journals? These large size, these tall and narrow junk journals. Do y'all have a preferred size? I kind of like all of them. I mean, I don't know. I like all the different sizes. I like making mini. I like making regular. I like making the tall. I've really enjoyed making the tall. Right now they're my preferred journal, but they're not like my absolute favorite. I guess it also depends on what materials you're working with. I mean, if you've got a lot of smaller pages or papers, then of course that's going to dictate what you do, right? And don't do what I'm doing. You want to do these one at a time, actually, because you don't want these to accidentally get stuck down, right? Right. Oh my goodness. Okay. Burnish this. So you can see as I'm working along here, I would, with my luck, I would accidentally get one of these stuck to something and then I'd have to scrap the whole thing. Nah, never that. Okay. And then let's get this end. I'm going to do the ends and then the sides. Go. I've really enjoyed this size though. And you know, the other thing about this size is that I don't feel like I waste as much paper because I use a lot of 12 by 12 or papers that are larger than the typical 6 to 7 inches that I would typically do in height on my junk journals. So I feel like I'm actually, you know, I'm not left with as many scraps. I'm using up quite a bit of it. So I'm using a lot more paper. Look at those nice tight edges. These corners look great. This never happens. Let's get this up. And then get this glued down. We're almost done. Almost done. All right, now we just have to cut our center pieces that are going to go here on the inside. Let's see what we've got. Okay, I just found this sheet of paper and it's just this solid blue, and I'm kind of thinking that I might use that. I think that I might like that better. Okay, we're going to do that. This is a little bit thicker than both of these papers, but the good thing about that is that it's not going to be on any of these folded areas, so it'll be totally fine. It will be totally fine. Make sure that those are getting stuck down. I might have needed to apply more glue. That's fine. It'll definitely be attached when we sew. We're going to sew along that area. Okay, so I'm also going to cut this. I'm not going to have to go extra. So this is going to be just shy of 4 1/4. And then I'm going to cut to, I don't know, probably, this is 11, so 10 3/4 by 4. Let's try that. All right. Let's ink up around the edges. Nice. Okay. You know the drill. I'm going to speed this part up so that you don't have to watch me fiddle again. All right, there we go. We've got ourselves a cover. Oh, this way. And so we've got our nice folds here. We want to kind of keep working those. I can still feel that it's still drying, all of it. There we go. But look at that. Isn't that pretty? We've got our cover. I'm going to ink up the edges of it to tie it together. So the only thing that I would recommend, like anything else whenever you're covering chipboard, if you want to have this soft rounded spine, I would recommend that you either use maybe washi, regular washi tape, or fabric washi tape, or fabric, or tissue paper, or the very thin, you know, single-sided, very thin cardstock paper. That way it remains flexible. It does give it some support, but it also remains flexible. So, you know, just regular washi tape would be fine with it too. So there we go. It's nice and pliable. And in the next video, we'll work on our signatures. So don't miss out on that. Be watching for it. And if you have any questions, just drop them down in the comments section and I'll be happy to answer them. I'd also love to hear, love to hear what you are currently working on. And if you do anything for the 4th of July, any projects that is, if you're working on anything 4th of July related projects. Thank you for spending some time with me, and until next time, bye.